Yeah, good evening. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Thomas, for the introduction. My name is Brenner. I'm part of IBM Research, a discipline called IBM Quantum. My background is cryptography, so I'm a cryptographer, but I'm working for 30 years now. I'm working with all kinds of organizations to get things right, to do with cryptography, more or less. My office is in Lichtenstein, in the Zurich Research Lab. My home office is quite close here, so that's quite a very important region, I think, for quantum, but everything that has to do with quantum. So very glad to be here. What we see here on the right is a quantum system 2. That's not a mock-up, that's a real system. So quantum computers exist. We in IBM Research, and in particular in the Lichtenstein Lab, we are working on all aspects related to quantum. You see here, IBM Research is a global organization in essence. We have about 3,000 researchers. We are a research organization, not R&D. So we also do foundational research. And you see the Zurich Lab, which has been the first outside of the US, is pretty well connected on also with academia, not only in Switzerland, but throughout Europe. And the ones who have as much gray hair as I do may still remember the Nobel Prizes in the 1980s for scanning tunneling microscope and for high temperature superconductivity, 1986 and 97. Two technologies in essence that were essential for our progress in developing quantum computers. So what we do see is a broad range, but I will talk about two topics today. A little bit about quantum technology, but just a tiny little bit, and then more about what we call quantum safe. That is the effects, the collateral effects of the progress in quantum computing. Most of us would do not really like too much, though there are organizations that do well. So let's look at these two things. We have two missions in IBM Quantum. The first one has been there for decades. So we are working on quantum computers for a long, long time. The second one is pretty fresh. So we are working on that for a long time. It has only recently, so two and a half years ago, been elevated on that same level. And that's probably learning from AI. So whenever we have a new, groundbreakingly new technology, we have to think about the possibly negative effects. And this is what we do here. I will focus a little bit more on the quantum safe part and quantum, but let's start with that one. Quantum computers exist, and they do not just exist in nice pictures. These are our quantum computers on the cloud. And one of your questions, Thomas, was who gets access to it? Well, you all get access to it. Just look it up. IBM Cloud Quantum Services. You will find that there are plans to access these quantum computers, or at least some of them, even for free. And there are other kinds of commercial plans, obviously, so if you want to do more. But quantum computers exist, and two of them, at least when I copied this a few weeks ago, two of them are located in Europe. Most of them are in our data center in Yorktown, where they also have been developed. But two of them are in Endingen. You see the picture right, where we have the Chancellor helping us to open that European data center. So what can we do with quantum computers? And only very high level. We think we can compute, we can solve almost all the problems, right? There is always some way that someone can produce a solution. In essence, this vital ellipsis is representing what we can actually solve today. And you see there is a much larger blue part, which refers to the problems where we would have a mathematical solution, but where we would have to either wait for hundreds of thousands of years for any combination of current supercomputers to come up with a result, or in order to build such a computer, we will need to dig up half of the Earth or a reasonably sized moon or something like that. So not really practical. Right? What can quantum computers do? Quantum computers are not just faster computers. You see, it's not just everything that gets, this light ellipse doesn't just get bigger. Quantum computers are, in essence, specialized, very specialized computers that complement classical computers. So we will not have quantum computers on our desktop, at least not, probably not during my lifetime, at least not before I get retired. They will be in, or we see them in data centers, as the ones you have seen before. And there will be only a few organizations that have them in the basement. Many of these organizations will probably not tell us about this. But there is something else here on this picture. There's this factoring thing. And this factoring is one of our favorite problems in cryptography. Has been in the light blue part, safely, cosily. But now, the future quantum computers will certainly be in the dark blue part. And this creates a problem. So let's see how solid and how robust they are. If I bring up a little bit of cryptography, don't leave the room. So there's one part of cryptography, the asymmetric public key cryptography, that is based on types of mathematical problems, or systems of mathematical problems. And see one representation here. One part of the problem is the multiplication, very straightforward. These are 300-digit prime numbers. And this computation happens all the time on all our devices. We have supercomputers, but also notebooks, mobile phones, smart cards, whatever. So very fast, very simple. Not for human beings, but for computers, that's really simple. Now if you turn this around and look at the opposite direction, same order of magnitude, that's a 600-digit product of two 300-digit prime numbers here on the left. That's one of these problems that where it doesn't make sense even to try and find, because it will take us just too long. And we can build cryptographic systems out of such relations in a way that you can protect communication, that everybody who is invited to the communication can do the easy computation, whereas everybody who is not invited will need to do the difficult one. Makes no sense. And exactly this principle, that we have two operations, one is easy, the other is difficult, helps us to protect our communication now for 30 years. Since the dot-com bubble, for those who remember, in the mid-90s, basically every digital model, digital business model, digital communication, digital service that has been rolled out uses this principle. That there is something which is so difficult to solve that we are secure. Unfortunately, we know this for 30 years, so even before we had a view about practical quantum computers, there is a quantum algorithm that once we have a quantum computer which is sufficiently powerful, which is not today, this problem will become simple. And that's not very nice. So let's look at what this cryptography does. In essence, usually we don't care too much about cryptography. It's just there, right? We just use it. We don't even know that we use it. Now, in this case, it's worthwhile to think about what it does for us. It's these four functionalities. It not only protects our communication, it also makes sure that our communication partner is the entity we think it is. It doesn't make sense to build up a secure connection over the internet if you don't know who you're talking to. Integrity, it assures that our messages do not get changed. So my bank transaction arrives at the right place, with the right amount, what I intended to. And the fourth, it ensures that it can be proven who in a communication they are, which is in a sense a part of contact. Right? And it's this cryptography that creates the trust in our digital ecosystem. Everything we do trusts that we talk to the right person, our communication is not changed, it is kept confidential, and in essence, if you have a contract, that we can prove who said what. And it's this what is at risk. Our whole trust in our digital communication. So what does it mean? Look at this a little bit more precise. There will be a day. Assume there will be a day when we have such a quantum computer which is sufficiently powerful to factor these huge numbers I showed before. We will speculate a little bit later when this time would be. that day onwards, in essence, all the protection measures that create trust in our digital activities will use their foundation. So from that point on, we cannot trust anymore that our communication is unchanged, that it reaches the right counterpart. Examples, firmware updates, we have virus signatures, for instance, but also digitally signed documents with a legal meaning, for instance, can be forged, and encryption keys can be stolen, in essence, because they are protected, usually, by this very asymmetric cryptography. It's not a very nice scenario. What it means is that up to that point, we need to look at every piece of technology, or relevant piece of technology, which is quite a lot, and we need to do something. We need to protect it in a way. You see that later, it can be done. But there is already a situation we have to consider right now, and this is more specific. We know it's documented since the Second World War, that communication gets captured, right? It gets recorded in the hope that it can be decrypted later. And this is also happening today. So, no kidding, right? But now there is a perspective. So, communication that is recorded here, and it's not that you have to basically to record everything that goes on the internet, right? It can be in a very focused way. Communication that's recorded here can be decrypted within a probably foreseeable time frame. That is very specific. There are already measures to protect against that, but they're mainly cryptography driven. So the right-hand side, think of it as a kind of a global technology refresh. Sounds like a system integration thing. You should try to do that in a non-disruptive way, because basically all the digital business is depending on that. So whenever you touch something, it should be done with a lot of care. The left-hand side, that's very deep cryptography, but very, very powerful. So one takeaway could be that you look in your organization where you have data that's communicated that could be attractive, could be recorded, and could be painful to see disclosed in a few years from now. And on the other hand, you should think about how to cope with the right-hand part of that problem. So, I could talk about this for hours, but I will not do that. Just to give us an idea of when we could have such a quantum computer. And there are lots of uncertainties here. This is our roadmap, our IBM development roadmap. It's a research roadmap. Doesn't mean these are all commercial products here. It basically shows the progress of the ecosystem. And there are only two things I want to mention here. First, this is the whole ecosystem that is developing. Again, going back, for those who remember when we switched from vector to massive parallel architectures. At the beginning, we had all these massive parallel computers with 1,000 cores at that time, and we couldn't use them because there were no algorithms, right? Only a few test algorithms. So we had to develop the algorithms first. Here, it happens all in parallel. So we have the quantum algorithms. We're working on these basically before we have the platform. Right? And this means if you have the platform, you can run these algorithms more or less immediately. In particular, for Shor's algorithm, the one that covers cryptography, that is a problem. That is the first thing, full ecosystem at once. The second, when we have a platform that is able to run this Shor algorithm, it will need about roughly something in the area of 10,000 qubits capable to run a few billions of operations. And if you see here, we have three generations, and it's the grey one here, the Starling and Blue Jay generation, that comes very, very close. So, Blue Jay platform, we plan for 2033 in the area, 1 billion gates, 2,000 qubits. That's very close. And if there are organizations that are not building a general purpose quantum computer as we do, for commercial use, then in the end. But a focused one that is only capable to do exactly what all these intelligence services would like to do, then it may be even further. However, there are still some challenges on that way, so it may also take longer. But in essence, if we keep to this roadmap, then by the mid-30s, we will have a quantum computer that is able to run Shor on reasonably sized numbers. It will take a few decades. So still challenges, I don't want to say we have it then, but if we follow that plan, we get close. And that's closer than we maybe ever were. So no reason to lean back and say it will come only in 50 years. It may come much, much, much closer. Reasonable time frame, that's quite common now, is 5 to 10 years from a risk perspective. Quantum physicists will phrase it differently, but from a risk perspective, there we have our paranoid hat on, we say, maybe earlier. Right? These guys may not know everything, or they may not tell us all, or they may include a security margin, a safety margin. So, 2030 to 2035, that's a common working hypothesis. What has been done? First, we need new algorithms. And that's where we have had quite success in the Zurich Research Lab. In this sense, the US NIST has selected 4 new algorithms that are not exposed to quantum computers, similar system, but different mathematical problems, and you see 3 out of the 4 come from people led by researchers from the Zurich Research Lab. And for the 4th, we have one of the co-authors, meanwhile, who is also part of our lab. There's a lot of competence. We've worked on this for 10 years already. Yeah, it's a very nice thing. So these algorithms have to be included wherever. The old ones, based on factoring, or discrete logarithms, or elliptic curves, the ones we use today are used. It's not that simple, because they have a different resource footprint. Usually they have much bigger signatures, so you have to send around much more data in order to get a secure connection, which is not a problem at home, but it may be a problem when you have heavily loaded organizations or infrastructure needs to be considered. So it's not just a replacement on the algorithm level. Don't go and tell your developers you just go and include guidance instead of RSA. That will not be a good idea. You have to know exactly what it causes, right? So testing, get all your vendors, see whether they interoperate. So it's not an easy thing. So what are the recommendations? What are the authorities saying? Well, there are some recommendations that are here for a while. For instance, NIST has it on their website for many years. But who reads the NIST website on Sunday mornings? But we see more now, in particular also industry regulators, the Financial Services Authority in Singapore, for instance, issued a very, very clear recommendation to their banks there, also private banks in Switzerland, that they have to consider this and put this on the agenda. There was a very loud statement from the NSA already in 2022, so 2 years ago, where they say just after the NIST actually communicated the 4 algorithms, 4 algorithms, by the way, which have been standardized months ago or 6 weeks ago, so they are standards now. The NSA issued a mandate to all suppliers to the US government, and that's quite a lot. All technology suppliers to the US governments need to implement these new algorithms for every new service and new product starting 2025, 6 and 7 as default and preferred. So these algorithms have been standardized 2 months ago. 2025 they already should be included in their software and technology. It's a lot of pressure, and we can speculate why. So there must be someone on the globe who worries the NSA that they could be more advanced even than the US. And it's no secret this someone is China. But there is pressure on that, right? If you look at what happens in Europe, there is a little bit more recommendation, not mandate, that's not the style in Europe. We see the European Commission, the French, the Germans, the Netherlands, and more organizations. There is a paper in Switzerland as well, but nothing of this goes beyond recommendations. It's not a must. From our perspective, it's a little bit too soft, but it's also a cultural thing. It does not prevent organizations to act on that. And if you see on the right, for instance, there are all recommendations to draft a plan of actions. So there is a summary, right? If I go through all these sources, they all say the same. They say organizations should put this on the agenda and start the plan. And the first one, I think that's from this transition now, that's from least, that's at least 6, 7 years old. So it's still now. And it's no different than now, also this year and next year. But there will be a point in time where it may be too late. So, that was a kind of a very high level overview on what happens, in particular quantum safe area. I think we have time for questions later with the uproar.
Yes, sure, yes. And, thank you very much, Marco.